Oh yeah, I was gonna talk about how furries are made, just at the bare basics part of it. People were asking, like, can you be a furry that came from Angry Birds? And it's like, well, yes, but actually no. Conversion? Oh no. I hate that you just used that. Technically it is conversion, and you have the whole, like, levels of becoming a furry, slowly but surely. Which I think I did a genuine video on that, instead of the whole sarcastic, really edgy, look at me, let's see how many people I can insult in seconds challenge video. There's some genuine, like, levels, stages of becoming a furry, which I think people did. I know I did. I know I'm not the only one to do that sort of video. That's okay. But when it comes to, I guess, I don't know, becoming a furry, like being turned into a furry, technically everyone's into TF in some sense, I don't know. But like in terms of becoming a furry, or what really like triggers people to, one, learn about the fandom, or two, have some interest in it, I don't think it's strictly related to anthropomorphic cartoon media. Like obviously, you know, Zootopia and Digimon and Pokemon, Looney Tunes and all that is like the stem of it. What people say is the motivating factor for what turns people into furries. But I think it's more of just, in a natural sense, people are curious about animals. Like, I think at one point in our lives, not just furries, but even normal people, some people just ask, like, wouldn't it be cool if I was like a wolf? What would it be like if I was like this animal? Like, I'd fly everywhere, or I'd run everywhere with my pack. Like, even just in the most, like, non-serious comical sense, or just childish sense, people have that thought. And I think it's just a natural sort of question that some of us have. Like, what if life was so simple? I'd love it if I just didn't have to pay taxes, and I could just be a dog all day. You know, that'd be kind of nice. I think that narrative is more so pushed because of how boring and bland normal life is. Like, the whole idea that everyone should, like, have a 9-to-5 job, have a wife and kids, a nice white picket fence. You can have that life if you want. If you really want that, if that's what really speaks to you and you want that, live your best goddamn life. But to some people, that's a rather empty sort of conclusion to go to. Like, some people are just, they get there and it's like, I'm fucking bored out of my mind. And that's how, in some sense, you get a lot of furries that are either at the age of, like, younger than me, like 16, 17, 18, like somewhere in their 20s. And then you got furries that are in their like 40s to 50s, because they've already done everything that there was to like life. Getting a job, like pretty much living the normal life that is sort of expected of everyone in society. But life changes to some extent, and people are starting to question, or really not now, but have been starting to question, like, is the normal life that I have really fulfilling? And some people don't really find it to be that way, so they go off and find a hobby such as this. And I think that kind of is telling of something, that maybe normal life is not as great as it's chalked up to be. I don't know, I went on a weird tangent, but that has nothing to do with how people become furries. I guess the main point of the whole thing of how people become furries is you have that natural sort of fascination, not just with the anthropomorphic cartoon animals, but with animals in general. Just like, wow, wolves are pretty cool. Wonder how they survive. Or like, wonder how they work. Wonder what it would be like to be a wolf. And this is just talking at the normal basic interest in animals. As humans, we're always curious about other species, other animals, and that's fine. Zoology, I'm gonna be honest, is a pretty interesting subject. And I have nothing but respect for people like Dr. Wildlife, who are able to memorize and work with animals on a daily basis. God, I would love to do that. That sounds cool as hell. But I guess when it comes to the natural interest in animals, it's more so heightened when they're cartoonized, when they're anthropomorphized, when they're given human features. That's when that natural interest is sort of reignited. Where that natural interest in, like, what if I was this animal or whatever? That's where that, I guess, natural feeling starts to become reinvigorated. So I guess in some sense people do become furries because just anthropomorphic cartoon animal media. Like, you got like mascots and all that, and cartoons that pander to kids, that pander to this colorful, cartoony, positive nature, and then like people look at it and it's like, wonder if there's more to this. Wonder if there's something interesting about this. And obviously it's very easy to say like, oh, you know, Zootopia is responsible, or like any specific form of media is responsible, which, in all honesty, yeah, that is the case. It's all responsible. But at the end of it, like, don't you think that, like, because it is responsible, and even, like, people that aren't interested in the furry fandom made it, don't you think that there's just this natural human interest about it? I think that's very telling. And some people, you know, pursue that interest further, and they might use it as sort of an escape from the whole real world thing and take it in their own sense. That's why the fandom somewhat exists. It's like, it's a community, it's a hobby. There are other fandoms that exist and people get into their own interests and hobbies from there. But it's all sort of a stem from like geek culture. I know I've talked about geek culture to an extent, how like furries and weebs and gamers and comic book fans and just all these different hobbies that revolve around being a nerd or a geek, which in some sense was seen as an insult, but in reality means that you don't have the personality of paint drying. You have interests, you have hobbies, you have so on and so forth. But back then it was like an insult to an extent. But when it comes to those different hobbies involved in geek culture, there's nothing different about it. I don't know why we all hate each other to this extent, or like most other geek cultures or hobbies hate furries. We're all the same in some sense. Like, what the hell? I don't know. Maybe they just look at the bad stereotypes and that's it. You got the basic interest of animals. Like, wouldn't it be great to just not be human? To just, like, not have to deal with taxes and a wife and kids and life and a white picket fence and mortgages. Oh, mortgages. Wouldn't it be nice to just live a simple life? Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with looking at that in that sense. And so that natural sort of interest in it might be pursued further, or reignited further, or taken to the next level because of cartoonized media, with anthropomorphized animals, with them being thrown around pretty much everywhere to pander to kids and to sell things. Because I'm going to be honest, we all in some sense relate more to animals than we do to people. I think it's a genius idea when companies take on animal mascots to represent their brand or their community or company. It's easy. It's genius. That's how you understand what that company is. If you put like a face as like the mascot or brand character of your brand, I wouldn't know what the fuck you're talking about. If you said like, do you know that company that has the fox mascot? I could give you 5 different ones and one of them probably would be what you're thinking about. If you told me, do you know that mascot with the guy with the weird head and the beard? It's like, oh yeah, him. Yeah. So yeah, naturally, it's easier for us to sort of distinguish between Joe Schmo on the side and then like a fox animal with a shirt. You know what I think of when I hear fox with shirt mascot? Carfax. That is probably like the most... Okay, Mr. Clean is a different thing. Mr. Clean is more of his own anthropomorphized animal species than anything. He's so distinguishable from the rest of it. He's the only one that I know. Mr. Clean is on an entirely different plane of existence than any of us. What I'm talking about is just the random Joe Schmoes. You're trying to tell me that I'm comparing Joe Schmo to Mr. Clean? You can't do that. Mr. Clean is too unique. What would Mr. Clean's persona be? Winter Fox. Pretty easy. Pretty straightforward. I mean, okay, yes, Ronald McDonald. That too. Fine. You got me there. But I'm just saying, when it comes to, like, understanding things, it's easier for us to look at cartoon animal and be like, oh, I get this more. Because in reality, humans are very, very much repeatable and the same. I mean, I guess the same thing goes for animals too. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. I'm just talking out my ass at this point. I guess naturally we all have some interest in animals though. Whether it's basic fox that you see in your backyard, if you're lucky, or Carfax guy, which I really don't want to see what furries have done to him. When it comes to it, we all have just some fascination with it. And I think it's genius that people manage to anthropomorphize and cartoonize animals to get some interest out of it. And I think it's even more fascinating that this whole concept was turned into a fandom, a community that is so charitable, but also somewhat profitable. I don't know. I just think it's really interesting. It's so fascinating that we went from like interest in basic animals to like dressing up as my created furry persona that also a rainbow threw up on it. Isn't it weird? It's just like, I don't think it's like weird in the sense that it's bad. I just think it's weird in the sense that it's so fascinating that we got to this point. Yeah, Russia's Fursona, ZombyWoof. Or like the Russian soccer Fursona. That too. So yeah, ZombyWoof, kind of an example. I guess in the sense because furries take it and they're like, but what if? Multiple times have I said this. It's where furries take a design of an anthropomorphized character and are like, but what if? That's how we know that it is somewhat furry bait, or that furries were created from that character. So I guess in that sense, if you look at it and it's like, could a furry have existed from being a fan of Angry Birds? Or could a furry have turned into a furry because of Angry Birds? Does Rule 34 exist? Absolutely, so then that's the case. So I guess in that sense, anyone can be a furry for any reason. It just doesn't have to be the stereotypical furry bait media that's online, or that makes people question, like, this makes me feel different. Renamon looks nice. Lucario, making me feel things. Just in that sense, you know. It's not just sexual, it's just an interest of like, I wonder if there's more media like this anthropomorphized cartoon media. And then they go to look it up, and then they eventually find the furry fandom. But yeah, I guess people become furries for different reasons. Not just the anthropomorphized cartoon media, or what they find online. But yeah, I think everyone just naturally has some interest in animals, and that is somewhat pursued further, or it isn't. Or maybe that initial interest in it, of just having something to escape from reality from, is sort of reignited or pursued further from this interest in anthropomorphic cartoon animals, or something relating to it. Like the whole thing with the pursuit of a normal life, you know, wifing kids, a nice car paid off, house paid off, maybe a pet, owning property, being well off in life. That's what is seen as the ideal life, or what society pushes as the ideal life. But that can somewhat be boring, or not really distinct from everyone else in terms of your life. Not everyone wants that, and people have been starting to realize that over the years. It's like, oh wait, this isn't really me. This doesn't really speak to me. This is just more so what was pushed as the standard for society. Well, standards are being changed and manipulated as we've gone on through life. I guess with life being boring to that extent, some people might look at that initial sort of interest in that, of like, what if I didn't have these responsibilities? Or what if I could escape from life, from doing this thing, from what is seen as good, but to me might not be good. I think it's interesting, because in some sense, maybe even that whole life that society pushes might be boring, or might not be what people want. And so they crave for something else. So that's why weird hobbies exist. That's why hobbies that stem from, you know, natural human fascination or natural human interest are brought forth. That's somewhat why the furry fandom exists, even just as natural interest in animals. Not to the extent of what if I was it, but just an interest or fascination in the animal itself, or animals, or even cartoons. Put those two together, and you have anthropomorphized characters. Push it even further, and you have furries. I think that's a good way of putting it.